Good afternoon. Matt, you got a hot mic?
Yo, yo. Play some tunes for us today, bruh?
Yeah, this one's for the market, big dog.
Oh, shit. God. Yeah, well, this mad world has made me crazy. Might just turn around to 180. I ain't politicking, I ain't kissing no baby. The devil on my doorstep being so shady. Don't trip. We don't gotta let him in. Don't trip. Yeah. I let it go, but I never go with it. Yeah, okay, cool as fall weather. Fuck the bullshit, I'm here to make it all better with a little music for you. I don't do enough for you. Without you, it's the color blue. Oh, no trip. I was in the city, they was talking that shit. Had the homies with me, all of a sudden they split. We ain't even worried, we just laughing, that's rich. You know how it goes, it ain't broke, don't fix. Hey, one of these days, well, no, goodbye. Don't be afraid, no. Think I lost my mind. Reality so hard to find. When the devil trying to call your line, shit I always shine. Even when it like them. No, I ain't God, but I'm feeling just like him. Hold on, true. See, I was in the bed, riding me and my bitch. We was listening to us, no one else, that's it. It's a flesh, it's a bit. Let me talk my shit, say my head got big. Yeah, well, listen, man, world made me crazy. Might just turn around to 180. I ain't politicking, I ain't kissing no baby. The devil on my doorstep being so shady. Don't trip. We don't gotta let him in. Don't trip. Yeah. I let it go, but I never go with it. Don't trip. Don't trip. Don't trip. Well, you could see this mad world made me crazy. Might just turn around to 180. I ain't politicking, I ain't kissing no babies. The devil on my doorstep being so shady. Don't trip. We don't gotta let him in. Don't trip. Yeah. I let it go, but I never go with it. Hey, one of these days will know you better. Don't be afraid, don't fall.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Simplified, especially whenever the market is doing what the market does. Appreciate you guys still being excited to come in and talk Web3 gaming. We don't look at the ups and downs. We just keep moving forward, knowing that it is indeed inevitable. Let's jump in with a few introductions. Unfortunately, just like last week, I am still losing my voice. I'm on like day 6 of just being in shambles vocally. So fingers crossed we're able to get through today's episode. I also just announced a 24-hour live stream on August 15th, so I'm going to do everything I can to have a voice for those painful 24 hours that I have set myself up for. We're doing it for charity, though, rain or shine. So please, if you want to get involved, make sure you reach out and we'll figure out the best way for you to do so. Up first, a true superhero, both online and off This crusader has spent 3.5 years crafting content to guide the greenhorns into the world of Web3 gaming, ensuring that they navigate the digital seas with safety and savvy. Not only a Web3 advocate, but also a dedicated foster parent, an animal rescue volunteer, and a colossal nerd. He's the protector of puppies, the guardian of Web3 gadgets, and the marketing master and business consultant extraordinaire. He's here to change the narrative and elevate the industry. Welcome to the panel. It's Alex Popovich.
Dude, I never get tired of hearing you introduce me, and I'm stoked to be back. Thanks for having me again.
Great to have you, Alex. Thanks for making the time, brother. And up next, he's got a dazzling portfolio spanning over 100 computer games in his 30-year career. For the 2 decades, he captured the ship at Leviathan Games, steering through the choppy waters of top franchises like MLB, South Park, Pirates of the Caribbean, and WWE. He's recently launched the Unioverse Hoverdrome, a mashup of Rocket League and Mario Kart adrenaline-fueled death matches, which hosted its first tournament, dishing out over $15,000 in cash prizes. Welcome to the panel. It's the one and only Wyeth Ridgway.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, I'm going to capture that and make it my voicemail message. Appreciate it.
No problem. Great to have you, Wyeth. Up next, this Maple Leafs and Colts fanatic is the ultimate conjurer of collectibles. As the NFT and wallet lead for Magic Eden, he's the Sultan of Swaps, the Emperor of Encryption, transforming every transaction into a triumph. Get ready to be spellbound by the marketplace magician who's as smooth as ice on the rink and as relentless as a running back on the field. Put your hands together. It's the Maven of Magic Eden, the ruler of RuneScape, the Knight of NFTs. It's Knock.
Yo, what the hell happened to the market? I take a few days off to go camping, come back, and everything is bleeding, both in crypto and traditional finance. Might just head back up to the forest and disappear for a few more days.
You might be doing all of us a favor if you did so. I'm not sure who exactly cursed the market, but somebody did. And I'm not going to point any fingers for the time being. And here comes the titan of tokenomics, the baron of blockchain, crowned the king of farming on blast. He's reaped rewards from the digital fields that most can only dream of. With instincts that put Nostradamus to shame, he's undeniably one of the best alpha hunters on the planet. Buckle up and get ready to be blown away by the unstoppable force of finance. It's the beast of blast, ICO Beast.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me back, Sam. I will say I apologize to the entire world for unwinding the carry trade overnight.
We'll learn to forgive you in time, brother. Appreciate you making time for us on this space. And as the architect of this thing of ours, our next guest has masterfully molded the mega community where hustle, heart, and unrelenting enthusiasm collide like a full court press in the Coliseum of Web3 gaming. Now, with his brilliant brainchild Nexus Labs, he's unfurled a next level utopia for Web3 gaming investors and enthusiasts, sprinting ahead and pushing the limits with every move. If that wasn't enough, he's the master of the mic, hosting shows day and night for veterans and novices alike. He's the Nexus navigator, the humble hustler. It's Hustlepedia.
Yeah, I feel like Matt and I went to dinner on, I think Friday or it was like Thursday night. I think it was almost like a last ceremony for the markets. It feels like we toasted up and we didn't know what we were getting into the next day. But no, pleasure to be up here as always, boys, and excited for the show.
Yeah, I think us getting dinner in Miami was the top signal. It's our fault. Sorry, Knock.
You thought it was a party, turned out it was a funeral, dancing on the graves of everybody in the market. Up next, joining us today is the architect of astronomical ascension at Scale Labs. When he started, the network was a modest 25,000 users, but under his watchfly, that skyrocketed to a staggering 40 million. He's the maestro of early stage marvels, turning fledgling startups into flourishing phenoms and venture funds into veritable treasure troves, conjuring connections and casting spells of success wherever he goes. His next mission? To chat with the smartest builders crafting the next generation of human interaction. So if you've got big dreams on scale, this is your guy. Slide into his DMs and spill the beans on your next big build. Welcome to the party, Sultan of Scalability, the Emperor of Ecosystem Expansion. It's Dante.
Absolutely fantastic to be here. I don't even think that like my mom has ever said something so nice to me. That's awesome. Really excited for this conversation. Got a lot of awesome, really smart people here, so going to be a good time.
Yes, my nickname is the mother of Web3. Tune in to my next show, unadulterated. I don't know. I shouldn't be working on the fly here. Up next, brace yourselves for a descent into the depths of darkness as we introduce a figure shrouded by day. He's the head of partnerships, but by the witching hour, he transforms into the macabre of marketing. He's the spectral steward of dark times, a battle royale game set in a world where nightmares reign and only the bravest souls survive. His love for horse racing is a mere echo of his true talent, summoning legions of players into the diabolical domain, forging fiendish alliances and crafting cunning campaigns that leave the competition in the dust. So light your lanterns and hold hold on to your souls as we welcome the dark conjurer of community, the necromancer of numbers, the ghostly guru of growth. It's Christian from Dark Times, aka Doofy.
I will say GM from Down Under in Australia. So thanks for having me, guys. Really looking forward to the chat.
Truly a GM. I think it's like 4 a.m. there or something. So big thank you for making the time, brother. We appreciate you. And of course, up next, I have the wrong introduction for him. So we're going to use an old one from the amateur golfer in his teens, slicing through greens with the precision of a scalpel, to the professional snowboarder in his early 20s, carving up the snowy slopes like they were a personal playground. He pirouetted into his 30s as a professional dancer, captivating audiences worldwide. Over 20 million subscribers later, he's the social media colossus, dominating every platform like a digital deity. Now he's set his sights on the vast, uncharted frontiers of Web3. Get ready to be wowed by the master of multiple trades. It's Matt Stefanina.
What's good? What's good? That one will do. Appreciate everyone coming out. It's always good to see who still shows up on the not so green up only days. So good to be here with you guys.
And of course, with YGG's Gap Season 6 having kicked off, offering a treasure trove of opportunities for gamers to play and earn like never before. With rewards, more games, and more chances to level up your life, YGG is the ultimate playground for ambitious and adventurous among us. And don't forget, YGG Play Summit in Manila is spanning 5 days starting November 18th. So get ready to team up, level up, and rack up those rewards. Big thank you to Yield Guild Games for being an official sponsor of Simplified. I was actually just talking to a questing platform today, and they were like, oh, yeah, times aren't so good. I was like, man, that's not true. It is the perfect time to be questing and grinding away because that stuff does not care about what's going on in the market. There's never been a better time to hop into Yield Guild Games and learn about these different games, airdrop campaigns, opportunities, etc. in the market. I firmly believe that. And of course, up next, gear up for a gargantuan greeting from our galactic sponsor that's breaking the blockchain barriers and shattering transactional records. We're talking about none other than Scale, the official chain of Simplified. Scale has higher TPS than Solana, faster finality than Phantom, more daily users than Ronin, and last month they had almost 90 million transactions plus 3.7 million unique active wallets. Thank you to Scale for being our sponsor in the official blockchain of Simplified. And plus, welcome to the whimsical world of crypto unicorns, where your fantasies take flight. There are official game of Simplified today, ready to joust your way to fortune. Earn CU, their coin, by battling it out in the most majestic arenas known to man and mythical beast alike. Hold on to your unicorn horns because this year they're on track to burn over 16% of their circulating supply. That's right. The first CU burn event is set the stage with $82,000 worth of CU tokens being burned, and the magic doesn't stop there. The Play to Airdrop campaign is galloping through August with opportunities galore. One quick reminder that nothing you hear today is financial advice. If you need financial advice, please consult a financial advisor. None of us on this panel are that, so please understand that these discussions are only opinions. Plus, we have one guaranteed whitelist to give out for Smoke.io. Their mint is on Thursday, the 8th, and they're helping the next generation of content creators quit their day job with a new mint coming up. I'll be giving that to someone who's contributing to the comments and retweets the space throughout the show, so make sure you're active, answering the questions along with the panelists. Always love seeing great comments. We're also getting back to our roots a little bit more today, simplifying things. So we're going to be making Knock or one of our fellow panelists simplify every topic in 30 seconds or less before we jump into the meat of things, because sometimes I think we can get a little bit stuck in the weeds before we really explain to people what the hell is going on at a high level. So I'm going to make Knock mostly carry the duties there, but if anybody on the panel wants to take that over, by all means. We're jumping in first with Explain Like I'm Five, Project Dragon. Yuga had about 1,000 players in their other side metaverse concurrently playing for Team Orangey and Team Aquamarine, respectively. Explain why I'm five, why this is impressive from a technical standpoint, because honestly, the game just straight up does not look good if you compare it with other games in a similar genre that are being released in a similar time. And then we can jump into the discussion of if we believe this is going to be successful in finding mass adoption, or at least success for Yuga as it is the title project that they've picked over Heavy Metal, Legends of the Mara, and some of the other ones that they passed over to Faraway. I'm going to send it over to Knock first. Knock, explain Like I'm Five. Why is this impressive, and where do you see them going from here, brother?
Yeah, so I think the biggest piece here from like an infrastructural POV, this is a pretty impressive feat. Most games struggle to have anywhere between like 20 and 30 players concurrently in a particular match or in a single instance. Some of the larger games, like Battle Royales, Fortnite being one of the biggest ones, up to 100 players. So you've got Yuga putting together Project Dragon, an opportunity for up to 1,000 players to enter into the same map, the same game experience, continue to play that game, and actually have the servers work. It's something that we just don't see a lot of teams push the boundary on for a couple of reasons. My cynical side says the reason for that is once you have 1,000 players in a map, it's really difficult to design anything that 1,000 people can do concurrently, and for it to make sense, for it to feel like a proper game instead of a bunch of people running around. The other side of it says a lot of teams haven't gotten creative enough to figure out a way to make 1,000 people in a single instance fun and exciting. So from a technical POV, it's multitudes higher from what we see typically from any team that's building in the space. But there's also, maybe some logistical reasons behind why we haven't seen that happen yet. I think it's impressive. I think it's a cool first display. I also think it's probably more of a marketing stunt than anything, saying, hey, we can support up to 1,000 people. That doesn't necessarily mean that's their intention long term with every experience within other side.
I'm going to send it over to Wyeth from Unioverse up next. Wyeth, your take on if this is the right move for Yuga and what they might be doing going forward.
Hey, thanks, Sam. He hit it right on the head at the end. Marketing stunt, 100%. They leveraged someone else's tech to put that together. It's neat. It's fun. It's just to see all the other collectors in one environment. But the reason why you don't see a whole lot of people leveraging that tech is because it is massively expensive to try to find the fun in a game. Even with 60 people or 100 people, you start trying to find the fun in a group of 1,000. And, think about the beta testing alone, needed to deliver a product like that to the market. It's insanity. So I suspect you'll see them pivot away from that. But as a cool marketing stunt with like some great videos that people can share, well done.
ICO Beast had the hand up next. What's your take on this one, bro?
We'll say Yuga has once again delivered a smashing success of a product that nobody other than ape holders will ever be interested in. And it's a total waste of time and money, and Yuga's completely washed, and they're never coming back.
Damn, short and not so sweet from ICO Beast, the man himself. Matt Stefanina, as a Yuga holder, your thoughts on this one?
Just ICO crushing my hopes and dreams. No, it's okay. That's what we're here for, the real takes. He sort of answered my question, at least from his perspective, but Knock and Wyeth bringing up that it is a marketing stunt. Sometimes that can be a good thing if it's successful. So I was just wondering, from a developer perspective, is this a marketing stunt that does actually impress or raise some flags for developers with like, well, we could actually use this? Or is it a marketing stunt that is literally just a marketing stunt, like ICO said, and completely useless except for some cool tweets that could potentially gain some traction?
Matt, it's what we call a throwaway.
Fair enough.
It's interesting to me that we've seen them kind of barking up this tree for quite a while now. I know that they've been trying to get as many persistent concurrent players in the same environment for at least the year that they've been talking about this. Knock, do you think that we will ever see them get to the point where people go, holy crap, like this actually looks good and they're taking advantage of that as a user experience to the point that people actually get excited about it? Or is it strictly that they're just focused on something that at the end of the day, people are not that interested in right now?
I think it's probably a little bit of a combination of both. I think from the Web3 side of things, it's a massively uphill battle for anything that Yuga does as it pertains to the other side, just because so many people are really deeply entrenched in the way that they feel about their approach to gaming thus far. I think if you put together an experience where 1,000 people can come together and do something, a live experience like you've seen in Fortnite with like the Travis Scott concert or some of the other major events that have happened in Fortnite, I do think that there's an interesting potential use case here. One of the things that I don't understand around the criticism for Yuga and for Project Dragon specifically is the way that it looks. I think that there are plenty of like legitimate reasons to criticize the way that Yuga has approached gaming, but I think graphical choice, especially when it's very similar to Minecraft and Roblox, two of the most popular games, probably the two most popular games on the planet right now, it just seems like a little bit of an absurd thing to fuss about. I don't think that it's a design or a graphic system that looks good to me personally, but I think that we've seen there's a proven use or proven want for that style of low poly art in games, in large social games, around having a bunch of concurrent players in a single experience. So I think that they might be barking up a tree that is a little bit different than what most of us think. It seems to feel like people believe that they're indexing on, bringing in late 20s, early 30s crypto bros into their gaming ecosystem. I think Project Dragon probably tells them or tells us that they're looking at a much younger demographic. They're looking at social experiences versus hardcore gaming. And they've been very consistent in that messaging over time. Doesn't mean that they're going to deliver, doesn't mean that they don't have a massive amount of work ahead of them. But I do think it's worth maybe reframing where the criticism is going.
Whenever I look at the gameplay footage from this, it's not just necessarily the graphical style. It's like the nuance and the polish in things like the floating combat text, the user interface, the user experience, the smoothness in the movement, which I understand does take a very long time to be able to build out as a game developer. And for whatever technical reason that is a little bit over my head, maybe it's even more difficult as somebody who's trying to build a concurrent environment for 1,000 people. I see your hand goes back up. I'd love to hear your take on that, and I'll send it over to Dante from Scale.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. I do think it's just worth noting that it really depends on what the game is being used for. Crunker.io is a game that I think is now dead, but at one point was massively popular, low poly shooter that people would use as like a warm up while they were in queues for CSGO matches or Valorant matches. And literally the only thing that it did well was hit scan registration, meaning if I fire a bullet, my bullet goes there immediately. There's no travel or projectile timing. The game looked terrible. The interface was pretty rough. It was really weird and janky.
Unfortunately, I know Knock is going through the Canadian wilderness as we speak, breaking up a little bit there, but he made some good points before the unfortunate cell phone tower devil took him out. Dante from Scale, tagging you in your thoughts on Project Dragon from Yuga Labs.
Yeah, 100%. I think that there's one thing that we're overlooking, which is like this could just be sort of a build-in public test of the technology for Yuga, right? Part of the reason that when we think about 1,000 concurrent players, our first thought jumps to a Fortnite or jumps to a Roblox is because this is an incredibly complex technical feat to take on, right? Having 1,000 players simultaneously interacting with one experience at the same time is incredibly difficult to do when it comes to just raw processing power, raw compute, syncing game state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is a tremendously large problem that Yuga is tackling, and like, yes, the graphics didn't look great. They're facing criticism on all fronts, but there's a good chance that this was a successful test for them. They were able to prove that they have the computational abilities that an Epic would or that Roblox does in order to just make this thing work at the most foundational level. And so in that sense, it was a tremendous success for Yuga. Now they can take this computational technology that they've built, which obviously is hugely important when it comes to actually making the game function, and now build on top of that. Right now that they know that the core architecture works, now they can go out and improve the graphics. Now that they can go out and improve the experiences, and so they have that layer, they have that sort of solid foundational concrete to build on, and now sort of the sky is the limit. Now Yuga can do what Yuga does best, if you will.
That's a great point, Dante. And going back to Knox's point for a second, I think part of the reason for sort of the mismatch between the way that people are interpreting this versus something else that's been successful in a similar way outside of Web3, BattleBit Remastered comes to mind, which was, I believe, a Battlefield remake in a low poly environment, which came out last year. My friends absolutely ate it up. It was not for me necessarily, but at the same time, it's been very successful. But part of the reason I think there's this mismatch in the way that people are receiving this, even though it's maybe successful, is that Yuga had the brand of being exclusive, of being super high quality, of being super expensive. And so whenever all of a sudden they release like a super low end graphical experience, it just doesn't really seem to match what we originally maybe fell in love with the brand of Yuga for. So maybe they just need to continue on their brand building to get people in the right direction there. I'm going to send it over to Steven behind the Decimated account. Steven's a guy who worked on Cyberpunk 2077, Darksiders, Just Cause 4, God of War, Borderlands, etc. So I'd be curious to get his take on Yuga and the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at the project right now, and I think that it does look pretty good. I really love the graphics, but I think that technically trying to get 1,500 concurrent players is a real technical challenge because there's so much information that you've got to transfer between the server and all those 1,500 clients. I mean, maybe they're only replicating the player positions. Maybe they're only replicating the player positions that are within, let's say, a 5 or 10 meter radius, and then the rest are kind of like ghosts, but there's no animations being replicated, no, player, like VFX and things like this. There's a lot of stuff that, even in our case, pushing servers and clients to like 100 players per server is already quite a technical challenge. There's a reason why games like Fortnite and Arma and a lot of other traditional games are limiting the amount of players that can play on the servers to like 60 to 100 max, is because that's really as far as you can push it before you start having problems with lag, all sorts of bugs that appear because one player's got 200 milliseconds ping versus 50 milliseconds ping. So I think that, it's kind of funny how there's a lot of Web3 gaming companies that seem to say that they can solve problems that traditional game companies have still not been able to solve. And believe me, there have been companies that have tried. Spatial OS, for example, were one company who rebranded to the multiplayer guys, and they specialized in making multiplayer games. But their tech never really took off, even though they had loads and loads of funding from Tencent. And their vision was basically to have tens of thousands of concurrent users in a huge open world server. But it just never took off because they weren't actually able to prove that the tech works. And I've seen other Web3 projects that have said, we could have like 10,000 players all in one server at once. And from my perspective, as a game development veteran working in the industry for 16 years and now working on Decimated for 6 years, I think that it's very ambitious, but at the same time, I'm hopeful that they can pull it off. Let's see how it goes.
Inclined to agree with you there, brother. Let's send it over to Wyeth again from Unioverse.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, Yuga used Improbable as their tech layer, and that actually is the multiplayer guys. That they're a subsidiary that was acquired by Improbable. So the tech that you're talking about actually is. All of your comments were actually correct. It is still sort of like a work in progress. There's no great example of commercial success with it, even though it is an amazing technology stack. But what Yuga did was basically pay those guys who have been doing that for 7 years, maybe, to run this promotional. That's why I'm saying it's kind of a throwaway promotional. They didn't acquire the technology or develop the technology to do this. They leveraged somebody else's tech to make it look good. Whereas BattleBit, which I have huge respect for those guys, totally the opposite situation. They made a tech stack to prove they can deliver a fun game to a large number of players. That's all done in-house. Those guys are fucking brilliant. So, there's a big contrast between those two efforts.
Oh my gosh, I muted myself. I was talking to Thin Air for the longest time. I was going to say, BattleBit Remaster, I believe, has been in development for like 7 years before they released. It was a small team, but still 7 years. And at the end of the day, we're still expecting Bored Ape to deliver a product, especially a cutting edge technical product, not only in the way of having 1,000 concurrent players, but also including Web3 technology, and expecting them to do it in record time and provide live updates at the same time. So again, it's probably just a mismatch in expectations versus reality of what can actually be accomplished, especially because they raised like $500 million and we expect, oh, well, they should be able to do it overnight because they have all that money. And that's just not how technological advancements necessarily work. Knock, over to you.
Yeah, nothing real of insight to this particular comment, but just wanted to say, if you don't know what BattleBit is or you haven't played it, go check it out. It is so cool. It is an absolutely fucking chaotic game with like 150 plus people on the map. Everything is blown up. Basically, anything that exists in the world can be destroyed. It is just chaos. You hear people from the other side. It is one of the most fun like experiences that I've had in gaming in a very, very long time. Go check it out. Go support that team. It's an incredible game.
From the other side, you say, knock, huh? Pun not intended, I'm sure. Up next, the news of the day is obviously the market being in atrocious condition. I think that we would be remiss if we didn't try to bring this up. I'm going to introduce the topic. I'm going to let Matt kind of host it so that I don't burn my voice out too much. But I want to start off by simplifying like how we got here. I know that there's a lot going on globally that might have had this effect on the market, and what your reaction is to this, particularly through the lens of Web3 gaming, however that might be possible. Knock, I'm going to send it over to you to simplify at a high level how you think we got here to this market reaction that we're seeing.
I don't think anybody knows like the exact reason why, but here's what's been happening just on a global scale, or at least from like the North American perspective over the last little while. You have a lot of turmoil around the election year. You've got the fact that a bunch of ETFs were approved earlier in this year, ready to absorb. And then in addition to that, both the US and Canada have technically escaped a recession, or just missed the recession by 1 or 2% of what a technical definition for recession is. So you've got a lot of financial uncertainty. I think it's no coincidence that the crypto market took a dump at the same time that the traditional market did. The US, I think on Friday, like $2.9 trillion worth of value was erased from the US stock market pretty much over the whole time period in crypto. So I don't think that this is necessarily surprising. That's as far as my educational willingness or knowledge will take me here. There's a lot of crazy shit going on a global scale that I think will have an effect on crypto. I think it's a reminder for a lot of people that we believe that crypto is this like autonomous being that operates outside of the world of traditional financial rule. It's probably not the case, and probably won't be the case for many, many years to come. There is still I don't want to say direct, but there's still a correlation between what is happening in traditional financial markets, especially in the US, and what is happening in the crypto space.
Yeah, I think that's a good take, and I'll step in on behalf of saving Sam's larynx to go through the hands on this one. But I tend to agree that there's a lot of uncertainty. I do think that at the end of the day, us going into an election year, there is very little chance that we're not going to see some recovery. So as much as it is shocking, especially if you're newer in the space, how quickly things can dip, I do feel like it's different than, say, the 2018 crash, where things were going down and it really had no chance of coming back. There was no catalyst. Whereas I feel like here we have a lot of things still on the horizon. But let's go through the hands a bit. Alex, over to you first.
Yeah, so thanks, Matt. There's a few things to remember here with this one too. Like, I don't want to lean on history too much, but a lot of things collided all at one time that definitely kind of lent themselves to this. But just for the record, just remember that aggressive moves up and down are not really sustainable, and it goes both ways. We always think about it with a blow off top, but like, think about how we entered the bear market in 2021, right? Like, it just bled for months and everyone was fighting it and resisting, like, no, this is definitely not it. We're going back. And then we didn't. So this is like a hyper aggressive while. I mean, you lopped 30% off Bitcoin in 4 days. That's bonkers. But then, of course, you have tumult from the Japanese central bank slapping an interest rate increase for the first time in a long time. Then you've got a bunch of underwater over-leveraged Forex traders who are all panicking at the same time. Then you've got the fact that we decided to hitch the future of the blockchain sentiment to a single.
That was my bad. I fat fingered mute everyone like a dumbass. I'm sorry,
No
Alex.
worries,
Keep going.
no worries.
I was like, did I fuck up already? Damn.
No worries. No, we also then went ahead and hitched like Web3 sentiment to a single political candidate who went and then imploded his campaign in 2 straight weeks, which was a weird move on all of our parts as an industry, but, go off, I guess. Then, of course, there's just the fact that, like, despite our best efforts to escape, and I think this space is one of those things that does a pretty good job, We are a teeny tiny itty bitty baby echo chamber, and it is truly wild to step out of it and see how few people truly have any clue what's going on here. I did like a volunteer onboarding for a crypto donations thing at the nonprofit I work for. And every single person there, the closest anyone came was like, I've heard of Bitcoin. No one else had heard of anything else. And they are like relatively tapped in people that work with me every day. So keep that in mind. Then, of course, you've got the stock market nuking because we have a crazy amount of like hype and prop up in that whole market from AI companies that are built purely on speculation that have a massive gap with like what they can actually materialize in product and revenue and all that sort of stuff. And then all of those things just kind of run straight into each other and result in this market nuking because sentiment is not super, super strong in crypto this period after a halving. You know, historically, the summer is always weak. We don't really see that much movement until like later in the year going into the following year. And of course, like Knox said, we had ETFs pre-halving, which gave us an all-time high before the halving happened, which has never happened before, which just really kind of threw the 4-year cycle into chaos. And now, of course, everyone is talking about and speculating about why that's different and why it's over forever and blah, blah, blah. So I always just release the same video every single time this happens, which is just take a breath, realize that panic is very telling. And if you are panicking, it is because you've made a mistake, and now is a great time to identify the mistake so that you don't make it again, because more than likely it's telling you that you're over leveraged. If you are really, really upset about this, you are over leveraged, and that's okay because it happens to the best of us. I speak from years of very painful experience there. We've all been misled by content creators, and that's, I guess, part of my mission here to help break out from that, because, you know, we're just sharing opinions on the internet at the end of the day.
Yeah, some really great takes in there, especially too on the fact that ETFs coming so quickly after the halving, really throwing some historical moves, kind of throwing the typical cycle off a bit. We've got a lot of hands on this one. Obviously, a lot of things to chime in on. I think we got ICO Beast next, and then over to Andrew.
Yeah, so I just wanted to highlight a couple of different things we hadn't hit yet. That's that Jump Crypto has been completely unwinding their holdings. They kind of set the bottom 3 years ago in 2021, and they've been aggressively unloading ETH over the last 2 weeks. I think it's like $400 million worth. They've been liquidating off their books, and Knav stepped away like 2-3 weeks ago. So that's kind of a big deal. The carry trade, we didn't really talk about the carry trade a whole lot, or even explain what that is. And I didn't really know still don't, I'm not an expert on this, but just imagine you borrow a bunch of super, super, super cheap money, and then you put it into something that's going to earn money faster because you think that super cheap money is always going to be super cheap. And then all of a sudden the original owner decides that it's not super cheap anymore and you have to sell everything. So that's what happened. And so when you have to sell everything, you have to buy back the stuff you borrowed super cheap, and that makes it more expensive. And then everybody else that also did the same thing, now it's even more expensive for them to buy it back. So they have to sell even more stuff. And so that's how you get a giant snowball effect. The problem is that it was basically $20 trillion worth, which is more than 10x the current crypto market cap. And so if you've got people that did this and like levered into AI stocks and maybe crypto and other risky high on the risk curve investments, they're going to see pretty nasty spikes down as that unwinds, because those are the things that get sold off first. So I think it's just a weird confluence of just a bunch of really, really unusual supply overhangs and unlocks. I mean, we didn't even talk about the fact the German government just got done selling like $1 gazillion of Bitcoin, and you've got the Mt. Gox distributions that came out 2 weeks ago. And then you've got the grayscale ETFs that, or I guess they weren't technically ETFs beforehand, but the trusts that ended up dumping tons and tons and tons of supply on the field, both between the Bitcoin ETF 5 months ago and then the ETH ETFs. ETH has been dumping every single day for like a week and a half. So it's just a ton of supply coming into the market. I mean, the boomers have done a great job today buying. I think you're going to see some nutty numbers on the buys on like ETH and IBIT and that sort of thing today. But really the best thing they've done for the millennials in quite some time. But yeah, it's just a lot of really interesting, unusual historical events kind of hitting at the same time.
What a plot twist if Germany low-key bought back all their Bitcoin at a discount now and outsmarted all of us. You never know. Andrew, to you, and then Johnny.
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for having me up. Sorry I was running a little bit late. I think the other key thing we can't forget is that the Middle East is in a potential war situation right now. Anytime you see the Lockheed Martin stock jumping up overnight, that's pretty a bearish sign in terms of macroeconomics and potential war that might to come. Certainly in America, there's a lot of insiders that trade on that stuff, and that was maybe one of the scariest things for me. The good news is, though, a lot of this stuff doesn't really change my core thesis on crypto or crypto gaming. It feels like just the ebbs and flows as people bring new capital into this space. As soon as they get scared, this is the first spot they pull it out of, right? People tend to pull out of their riskier investments. Someone mentioned leverage earlier, and I almost think about gaming NFTs as like the ultra ETH leverage. I lived through the 2021 boom and bust when I was working at Sky Mavis, working on Axie Infinity Esports. And it's like you have Ethereum, that's already a pretty high risk asset. Then you buy NFTs with it, that feels like leveraged Ethereum. Then you buy gaming NFTs with it that are reliant on somebody to deliver and all those narratives and the centralization attached to that. You're pretty leveraged by buying gaming NFTs already. If you have that and leveraged crypto positions, like, dude, you're on another level of risk. That's coming from someone who in 2022 was watching markets, and then we saw the cut when the Ukraine war started, and then we saw the further cut when Luna Terra went bust. And at the end of that, I was sitting there like, I am now underwater on taxes. I owe more money than I have in net worth if I sold everything right now. Fuck. And that's kind of how I ended up in Puerto Rico. So some similar feelings going on right now, and I can definitely attest to, like, if you are having that feeling right now, you're over leveraged. Don't be like me. It took me a few years to get back to normal. But here's to being normal here as this big dip happens. Stay safe out there, my friends.
Solid advice. Also, Puerto Rico, great place to be. So maybe not the worst in the long run. Johnny, over to you, man.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's hit on like what happened. I think what we're seeing though more so is every cycle we have these types of resets. We had the COVID thing; markets looked so doomed for a little bit, and then we literally went from like 10K Bitcoin to 40K in a matter of months. Then we took that big May 2021 dip. People thought it was over. It was literally a 50% decline, 60K to 30K. Most people sold their bags. They were very scared. It was just one of those climates where, not a lot of people actually thought we were going to go into that November time period where things got very bullish. Then we had a big time catalyst throughout the bear market, Luna, Celsius, FTX. But these types of things are just natural. And we were so frothy. Like everyone's making so much money on meme coins, posting P&Ls. Like it almost felt like we needed a rinse of that type of, capacity as crappy as it is to keep it PG. Like the market was so frothy in that regard that it feels like this type of a reset is very needed. And if we look historically, every cycle has black swans. I think we're just going through it all at once right now, but it's a good thing. Like I think that heading into election season, one thing I can implore, like I use Audible. I'm not an Audible affiliate, not going to shill you, but I do listen to audiobooks because I feel like I don't have time to sit down and read. And there's a good book out there. It's called The Lords of Easy Money. Now, we're all in crypto. We like to just be experts on like digital products, whatever, or like, in this space. But this will tell you about like monetary policy and what happens when these types of things like actually start unwinding. Like we have a whole economy over in Japan literally like crumbling as we speak. We have recession talks here. We have geopolitical stuff going on in different regions. And there's ways to get out of it as an economy and as a government. And I think we're going to probably go into those extreme formats because I can't see us being in a complete recession heading into the election season because the overall sentiment of people will be so low. And we saw what happens when there's governments that step in during COVID. I think that we're probably going to, if we head so close to a recession as people are talking about, I think that we probably see a little bit of an assistance package via liquidity coming into the market because they really can't afford us going into a recession at this time period. So that's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. And like I said, if I could make a book recommendation about these time periods, it would be The Lords of Easy Money.
Great stuff, Johnny. Mr. Matt Stefanino said he couldn't hear you. Space is down bad. Not couldn't hear half the panel as well. So I'm going to step in. Mr. Michael Wagner, let's tag you in, brother, from Star Atlas.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. First time on the show. So first of all, appreciate you guys inviting me up to speak. Excited to be here. I think there were a number of great points of discussion that you guys have already gone through. So I have been in crypto for 11 years. I've been through 4 cycles. So we're discussing macro right now. I missed the actual question or discussion point on this, but I assume we're kind of discussing the general state of the market and whether or not, is the bull over? In my opinion, we didn't even get into the bull. I think fundamentally there are so many positive catalysts moving in favor of Bitcoin and generally crypto markets. I mean, starting with the halving, you don't typically even see the bull market begin until Q4 following a halving. We're just getting into that right now. The political landscape, with Bitcoin being such a major topic of discussion and tipping point for the voting base and single issue voters, like unbelievable to me that Bitcoin is so prominent in the narrative of the campaign trail right now, which I think also kind of lends itself to this idea of not only the ETFs and the capital inflows in the United States and around the world with the launch of these ETFs, but also the notion that nation states might start denominating the Bitcoin standard at least as a part of their treasury. They talked about it here in the U.S. Senator Cynthia Lummis just announced a strategic reserve, and the objective is to secure 1 million Bitcoin over 5 years, which is just absolutely insane, nearly 5% of the supply. We see emerging markets like El Salvador rapidly and broadly adopting Bitcoin as a currency within that country. If you start seeing countries compete with one another to establish Bitcoin reserves, the potential inflows of capital are just unfathomable. Like, none of us on this call can even fully appreciate how significant that is. And while I do think it's a bit antithetical because, we're all like cypherpunks at heart and we don't really want governments to be the benefactors of or beneficiaries of holding Bitcoin, I still think if you're thinking about price and you're thinking about what's it going to do to my portfolio, then yes, these are all extremely positive developments. The one point I will make from the financial management standpoint, which may or may not hold to be true, but in scenarios of economic recession or market uncertainty, the term that's often thrown around is flight to safety of capital. And so you see people getting out of risk on assets like equities, maybe to some extent even pulling out of bond markets and moving into cash or moving into precious metals, gold, silver, etc. To some extent, especially when the concern is the potential collapse of the global currency that is the US dollars, I would not be completely surprised to see flight to safety mean moving into Bitcoin and moving into crypto assets. And does that trickle down into the rest of the crypto market? Does it trickle down into gaming? I don't know necessarily. But a positive movement in Bitcoin historically has meant positive crypto markets overall. And so, all of these things working together could actually be extremely beneficial for crypto markets in spite of the chaos that is out there in the markets.
Wow, really well said and summarized. It's great to have perspective of someone that's been in the space at a high level for so long. I'm glad I got to hear that. I completely missed Johnny due to Twitter, and I had FOMO because everyone was putting laugh emojis in hundreds for literally 3 minutes straight. So I'm gonna have to go watch the show back later. But let's send it over to Doofy Christian from Dark Times.
Yeah, it's not a topic that I love to talk publicly about a lot, but I have lived through a couple of cycles myself, and I think the biggest contributing factor, if you look at timing, is definitely the imminent war that is suspected to happen. We've all sort of lived through what happened in Ukraine in the Russian war and what happened to the markets there. But I think it's one of those things, and I actually wanted to ask a question, because all us crypto, blockchain, Bitcoin maxis who believe in the ethos and in what it can do for the globe and sort of run against those macro triggers. I do want to ask if we feel like we're further away from that ethos today as we were, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, given that there is so much traditional money flowing through cryptocurrency now, and whether or not that actually pulls levers that we don't want it to. It's something that I, really got wrong back in 2021. I think Andrew said, I was one of those over leveraged people at that time. Learn a lot of lessons. Have been there. Have definitely wanted to learn from those lessons, and I feel like I have. I watch the markets a lot less today as I did back then. But yeah, again, that question, like, do you think we are further away from what we are trying to achieve today as we were a few years ago, or do you think that we are heading in the right direction and having these large countries and or funds sort of fighting for major control?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. If anyone in the panel wants to jump in, let's send it over to Alex. And I see Andrew and Johnny's hands going up, so we can go to you guys after.
That is such an interesting question that I've been talking and thinking a lot about lately. But I would say yes to both, to be very honest. Like, if you kind of zoom out a little bit and look at the way that the broader financial market has been sort of set up from the people that it usually takes signals from, you've got like Larry Fink sort of changing his tune over the last 12 months, right? Like leading up to the release of his favorite product ever, his Bitcoin spot ETF, which he is actively driving people towards right now. And it's super interesting that this morning when the markets opened, that it didn't immediately dump, which shows that like people were sitting there ready and waiting to buy it up, which is super interesting because that sort of free fall definitely led itself to, at least me, to think like we might see a crazy red candle when the markets opened, but it didn't, which is interesting. Two, you've got definitely a little bit of a stray from the ethos, right? Like if you look at it on the political stage right now, tons of people are talking about crypto and Web3 and blockchain as a whole exclusively as the new super sexy investment class, and that's it. Which is not inherently wrong, because that's sort of the way that like we as an industry have been displaying ourselves to the rest of the world for a long time, despite the fact that it's not totally accurate. Actually, gaming is like a really beautiful little subsection of that whole thing because it's one of the few niches inside of the industry that doesn't exclusively present itself as a new way to invest in stuff, but rather a way to use Web3 tools in the way that I would argue they were intended to be used, which is just to own your digital property for the first time in your life, which is pretty neat. Which is also just a cool little aside, I guess, tangent. Gaming is dope because when the markets crater, the game servers don't all turn offline, so you can still play your games, but your crazy little Ponzi DeFi farms that have 19,000% APY are all broken right now, which is, what's the real Web3 there? Who can stomach the red candle better? That's a good play on real utility for what it's worth. But yeah, I think it's a super interesting question. I would say, we are straying a little bit away from it just because politicians are not looking at it exactly the correct way. However, it is the way that we handed it to them to be looked at. So that's something. But at the end of the day, I mean, like whoever, I forget who said this, someone said this about the internet when it was created. It's one of the few things we've invented that we don't understand. I would say that Bitcoin is in that same category. Like we're still, like even us, we're still learning about it to this day, even though it is what many would call the most simple cryptocurrency.
Yeah, fair enough. Another thing I don't understand is how Twitter chooses who I'm going to be able to hear and not hear. So let's send it to Johnny and test my luck this time.
Yeah, let's hope Matt can hear me this time. But I think also we're looking at a scarce asset, right? So despite whatever we think, governments getting involved, the adoption, we've always talked about the mass adoption of crypto and how we think it can be used for store of value, reserve currency, method of transaction, whatever you want to really term it as. I think given the fact that it is a scarce asset, I don't really think we might get to a point where, I can't go on Coinbase and buy Bitcoin. But at the end of the day, there's always a buyer and seller on both sides of these markets. And the government buying up or trying to build war chests or adopting this is super bullish for the Bitcoin price. And I think that, anyone who understands supply and demand would see that. Just the fact of, let's say, not to get political, but Trump says they would hold hold all the Bitcoin that they ever seize. Well, imagine if that ever became 10, 20% of the total supply. That would literally be so bullish for the price action. And at the end of the day, what in crypto is really decentralized? Like, I remember years back, people really cared, like,
this Vitalik controls the Ethereum wallet. It's not decentralized. It's like, okay, well, there's a founder of all these projects. There's somebody pulling the strings. Like, who really cares? What other than Bitcoin so far is decentralized? Really nothing. So I think that whole argument is also kind of like null and void at this point in time. So if we're talking about simple supply and demand, I think it's super bullish. Now, have we lost the plot a little bit with the priority in crypto? Maybe. Utility coins are overshadowed by memes, but that's just the degen nature of it. I think if we continue to see the adoption on Bitcoin, it's going to end up in a good place.
Great stuff, Johnny. I know Matt, again, can't hear you, unfortunately. A couple of quick things. One, don't forget we have the smoke.io guaranteed whitelist. That mint is going to be happening on the 8th. If you guys want to get in that, they're supporting creators in UGC, which you love to see. I'm giving that to somebody who retweets and comments in the space, so make sure you show it some love. In about 30 minutes, we'll be selecting who wins that. I'm going to send it over to Andrew in just a second, but real quick, I just wanted to highlight, 30 minutes we've been talking about this. Nobody is doom and gloom. Everybody has a deep perspective on the space because they've been around and they have deep conviction on what's going on here. And it is just a reiteration of why I love the people that come to this show so much every single week. Thank you to each one of you guys for not freaking out and for being authentic and for having conviction and sticking by that conviction and not just flip-flopping based on whatever the present narrative is. I just can't say it enough. Thank you guys. Let's send it over to Andrew and then Matt will kick off our next topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what innovation looks like, right? And it's often messy and bumpy. If we remember back to, I think, 2012, there was a time when Bitcoin was still very young and Julian Assange was having problems, wanted to use Bitcoin as a fundraising mechanism. And Satoshi was still active and was posting about, like, we can't do this. Maybe it was even in 2011. This is risking failure to the broader Bitcoin ecosystem if we get associated with being a donation chain to Julian Assange right now, right? And it's not even a political statement about Julian Assange, but recognizing that the smaller the whole network is, the more vulnerable it is to sort of the wrong kind of branding. So it feels inevitable. I think if you believe in Bitcoin and the thesis and the ethos of permissionless money, the value prop is so strong on top of it being a scarce resource that there's just no doubt in my mind that governments will eventually start competing with each other for it. Does that mean we've lost the plot? Not really. I mean, I think this is what freedom's all about, right? The irony of freedom is it means the freedom for people that you don't like, generally to use tools to do stuff that you also might not like. And as long as we're not talking about really unethical stuff, murder, the big ones, there's a shitload of gray area in there. And that's where that feels like it's working by design. If it's really permissionless, then we can't say it's only for people and not for governments. It's for everyone, everything, and every entity if it's truly free and permissionless. So I do think it's holding true to the ethos. However, you're right that it's a little scary. The implications are really intense. It's probably good for price action, but Bitcoin needs to exist to continue being a narrative against the CBDCs and the really bad super centralized stuff. So I'd rather governments buy Bitcoin than governments launch CBDCs any day of the week.
Wow. Absolute mic drop perspective along with that history lesson. I'd actually forgot about that situation with Julian way back, but really interesting. We're going to move on from this one just because we do have a few other topics that we want to hit from the broader spectrum of the state of the market to something a little bit more specific. This is a conversation that's been going on in a lot of my group chats lately, and that is NFTs versus coins within the same project, and specifically gaming. We have things like parallel avatars versus the Prime token, Pixelmon Trainer NFTs versus the Mon token, AI Arena Passes, NRN token. And regardless of which game you're looking at, would love to get everyone's perspective on how you decide right now what you're going to invest into between the token versus the NFT and why. And obviously in this market right now, it's a bit even more so up in the air. But as we do recover and we have these projects gaining some momentum and releasing products, where are you guys' heads at on the best places to invest? I'll send it over to Knock first if there's anything too you want to simplify on this one before we kick it into the hands.
No, we'll jump into it. I just wanted to say, something I say a lot is if somebody in crypto tells you with 100% certainty what's going to happen, they're either lying, stupid, or both. I want to make an amendment to that statement and add one quick side note. 100% of the time, Twitter Spaces will fucking break. I lost Andrew halfway through his last bit. And I've been struggling to hear the panel the entire time. That's the one exception to the rule. Anytime anybody else tells you something with 100% certainty, they're lying, they're stupid, or they're both. But Twitter Spaces will break every time. On to the actual topic. I think the answer here, like, depending on the type of person you are when it comes to the Web3 ecosystem. I'll give you mine. For me, because I have so much surface area and because I talk to so many teams and because I work at Magic Eden and we do a whole bunch of spaces, I don't have the time to do the correct amount of due diligence on individual NFT collections. So broadly speaking, I
Knox service also failing 100% of the time, unless that's me being rugged by Twitter again.
No, that was everybody.
oh,
Let's move through some of the hands, and then we'll circle back to the big dog.
Find a better tower, Knock. Put the phone up and say, "Can you hear me now?" Let's go over to Michael Swagner, and then we'll hit up Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, I won't get, as a founder, I'm not going to necessarily get into any, obviously, NFA or any recommendation as to where the best investment opportunities lie. I would just speak to perhaps the suitability of both NFTs and coins or tokens in games. I think that it's absolutely appropriate. You're just the closest analogy is probably any asset class in the real world distinguished against, say, the US dollar or whatever the national currency is. You can own land, you can own buildings. In games, you can own characters. In our game, you can own ships, etc. So having the ownership of the game asset distinguished from a currency, which can be a reward mechanism or incentive mechanism for the game, as well as the medium of exchange through that that universe or game economy, I think makes perfect sense. I think on top of that, not every game is doing this, but you could certainly couple governance structures through DAO tokens and layer that on top of the economy as well. In terms of who's buying what, I do think it's probably the decision would be made by whether or not the individual wants to be an active participant in that product, a user, or just someone who's speculating on it. I think it's prudent for anyone out there that's building games to really focus on that end user, the gamer who's truly intrigued with playing with the product and spending time and enjoying that product itself. That's not to say having traders and speculators is a bad thing. I mean, if anything, it actually creates market efficiency, better liquidity, which can be beneficial. But I don't think studios should be focused on going after the traders. We should just be focused on the gamers. Now, from that perspective, they need to purchase assets or own the assets in the game. That's important. Again, the emission currency or the inflation token that rewards people should be something that's completely independent of the assets themselves. One last point I'll make on this, where I think you can attract I'm doing air quotes here, like the investor mentality in games, is specifically when you're coupling like rental or scholarship systems with the underlying NFTs, wherein somebody can come in and purchase a portfolio of game assets with no intention of using them themselves, but through rental systems on very smart contracts, you can essentially loan those out or rent those out. Now that becomes a passive income stream for the owner of the NFT, and you're actually providing greater accessibility and affordability to the players who maybe can't purchase the asset, but is willing to get in and pay a certain amount to rent that, which they can earn from, or otherwise, a rev share model on it themselves. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, great perspective from the founder side. I also have some metaverse land that if anyone decides they want to rent out in the future, it is very much available. Sam, I'll give you the family discount if you want to come stay on my sandbox anytime.
Bro, nobody's taking your sandbox land off of you, big dog, no matter how hard you try.
What Jonah's gonna crack. I know he wants it. He's just playing hard to get.
If I
Let's
can, just really quickly, just on that, it's a great joke, but I mean, this is the significance of attracting the gamers. Like, you need the players in that want to use the assets, and then you'll have demand for rentals.
Yeah, I mean, we had this whole talk a few months back now. It's been on NFT rentals and land, and I think the thing we all came to agree on is that the model is there. There absolutely is a lot of use cases where it could be incredible, but without, like you say, the users, it's just not really feasible. Let's send it over to Johnny, who's going to say something incredible that I'll catch up on later.
Well, I'm so upset that Matt can't hear this, but I think there's maybe like 32 people that he could sell those sandbox land to. I don't think many more than that, though. If you know, you know. But I would say I think it's all about your strategy and your time. So like for me, obviously, I'm way deeper in the token scene. The reason I would get a gaming NFT is for two reasons. One, for the promise of a potential airdrop. So currently, there's stuff out there, the GOAT Gaming NFTs, Infinigods, Super Champs. There's a bunch of active campaigns that you could farm, and you have an NFT, it boosts your allocation. That's a very passive way to play it. And then for me, the only reason I would have a gaming NFT over the token is to actually play the game. Like if I need a certain character to do something or a land plot to be able to harvest something within an ecosystem. So for me, like I am 90% into gaming tokens, maybe even 95. But the stuff that I hold is either for a future, let's just say ROI via airdrop, or I'm actually using the asset. Like for me, if I look back in traditional games, just to be fair, my Call of Duty inventory, it was stupid because I had 1,000 items in Warzone and I'm using 3 at a time, like one gun skin for each of the meta weapons. If you know, you know. Once again, like I got my, let's just say the Kilo MP5. I got the one skin that I want to use off of those two. And then I'm using my one skin that I spent too much money on in the store. But all the other 3,000 things in my inventory, I didn't need. So I kind of treat my gaming NFT portfolio the same way, right? Like I'm definitely a merchant in that market of like wheeling and dealing. If I'm playing something actively, I'll have the assets. If I'm not, typically speaking, the gaming NFTs I have, like I said, are tied to a future token or an airdrop.
That's a great point, Johnny. If akimbo shotguns are the meta, then none of your other skins are going to get any love for quite a long time until they patch it up. Let's tag in Doofy from Dark Times, and then we'll work our way through Wyeth and ICO Beast.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. Yes, strictly speaking to gaming, I don't think I heard anyone on the intro saying that they're a professional gamer and have made a living from playing games to date. If I have missed that, my apologies. But gaming's such a release for us, like for us hobbyists, and we love spending money on things that we enjoy. And I think it's one of those things where you can have so many, even in traditional market, like traditional Web2 gaming, that there's so many high quality, large scale games, but we don't play all of them. We are very much emotionally attached to only a small number of games out there. And you know, when you're attached to it, you're playing it. You'll spend as much money as you want to play the game, even if it gives you nothing more than an emote or a skin. But I think that what Web3 is starting to do is it's starting to allow the whole market to move together and actually speculate or be involved with a game that you don't necessarily have time to play or aren't playing. And I think that's where coins come in. I definitely treat it that way as well. If I respect a project, I love what they're doing, I simply don't have time, or it's not necessarily my genre or style of gameplay, then I will back the project on the coin side. But on the NFT side, yeah, I mean, I look at my inventories on traditional games, and I'm the same, like thousands and thousands of assets that I will never use. I go back to my same 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 favorites, and that's just where I go. And I buy a new one, and I use it for an hour, and then I put it in that never going to use again pile. And so when we start to lend things out and start to allow those who might not be able to afford or play, I would love to see those assets being used. I think it's one of those things. But yeah, it definitely comes back to the individual. It comes back to the individual is what you're trying to do. It comes back to the individual of the game. And there's so many there's so many opportunities to just be involved in the whole ecosystem. And I think that's what I love the most is, regardless of whether you're going to play or not, you can be involved in the project.
I thought Matt was going to jump back in. Let's tag in Wyeth, and we'll go to ICO Beast.
Hey, great stuff, guys. I guess, yeah, I'm going to stick clear of describing things in the context of investment, but I will say the things that you should be owning are probably the things that you're playing with. That's just 100% makes sense. Our NFTs are user-created content, and I think that offers something really special because you build something like a gun skin or a spaceship or a hover bike, and that becomes your blockchain object, and then it starts recording a provenance or a history to the blockchain. And that's something like I can go into a room full of Web2 game developers and say this is why it exists and it makes sense. So I think that offers something more than just junk in your like infinite piggy bank of things that you're never going to touch. When you build something and make it and own it, it's a different emotional connection to that thing. The other thing I'll mention in terms of coins is if you have a game, I don't know why you would make a token, really. I think your vision needs to involve multiple games or potentially something like Gala or Portal, where there's a cross-game ecosystem. I think that's what you need to look at if you're looking for a coin. Because if it is just based on a single game, that game's going to have a lifespan. It's going to surge in popularity, hopefully, and then trickle out. And who's going to want that token to exist as the audience starts waning? So just look for utility that you understand and a vision that grows into the future.
I like that very simple way of putting it there at the end. Let's go over to ICO Beast. Just to refresh the topic too, for anybody who might forget, we're talking whenever the market is down like this, do you look for NFTs or coins whenever you're looking at one project? Let's take Parallel as an example. They obviously have Prime and then they have the Parallel avatars. Why might you take one asset over the other? ICO Beast tagging you in.
Yeah, so I think this may be pretty controversial compared to some of the more usual panelists. I am not really in on mini gaming NFTs right now. I think that the current offering of games does not support the valuations that a bunch of these NFTs are trading at. I have played hundreds of games over the last nearly 3 decades, and generally you spend like $50 or $70 these days for a really, really, really good game. It doesn't make any sense to me to buy an NFT for $1,000 for maybe a 5-minute pre-alpha of some game, and then maybe get some tokens at some really absurd valuation at some undisclosed TG in the future. So what I'm looking for in a game is I'm looking for one where I can either get rev share, which is really, really difficult right now because of the regulatory landscape. But if I can get that, I'm going for the token because that's where the value will accrue if they're successful as a game. If it is something else like, we'll say Fantasy Top on Blast, which is one of my favorite crypto apps, then I'm looking at the NFT there because the NFT is the card that you use to play the game. And the beauty of those is they're relatively cheap. You can get a starter deck for like $200 or something. And I think that is something that's really attractive from an NFT front is you use it, it doesn't go away. The value that's returned to the players is only to people that have a stake in the ecosystem. It's not going to these infinite farmers that are just constantly extracting stuff. And it's like 17 dudes in some village that are running 7,000 accounts each. It's just, it's you have to have some skin in the game. And then it turns into a skill-based thing. So really I'm looking for projects that are skill-based gaming or a skill-based gaming platform. Because ultimately the other stuff is going to be farmed pretty heavily, and any system that has more outflows than inflows is ultimately not going to sustain.
Yeah, interesting perspective. I think we got Decimated next and then up to Knock.
Yeah, I think that whether the markets are green or whether the markets are red, it's important to always maintain a healthy level of skepticism when you're evaluating projects, whether you want to get involved in the token or the NFT. I think that in the Web3 space, we've all been working in the Web3 space for years now. We've seen ebbs and flows of waves of projects coming in and then disappearing, for example. And I think that more research needs to be done in the projects on the backgrounds of the team. Do they have experience building the projects that they claim that they're going to build? Because the traditional gaming industry is already oversaturated with asset flips. They're using marketplace assets, marketplace environments, and characters, and features, and gameplay mechanics. They just reskin them. They put a token on top of it. They've got an NFT collection, and then they just run off with the money. And they don't really care about their project that much, especially when they start the project. They might have good intentions at the beginning, But when they realize how difficult it is to actually build and make the project, they usually abandon it after a certain period of time, which I think is really, really unfortunate. So this is quite prevalent in the Web3 space, and we get approached all the time by projects that would like to partner up with us and do cross collaboration. And we look at their project, and it's like a Lyra flip using marketplace assets that we can easily search on the Unreal Marketplace or the Unity store. So yeah, I mean, we're doing due diligence all the time on everybody that approaches us, and anybody who's evaluating projects, I think they just have to do that and ask not just people that are in the Web3 space who think, wow, this website looks really shiny, the trailer looks really good, the vision for the project looks amazing, they understand the tokenomics, etc. Do they actually have a product you can play? Because in the traditional games industry as well, it's really, really hard to raise capital from the investors and the publishers in the gaming space. They won't even give you any attention whatsoever unless you have a playable product, and ideally already quite a large community, for example. So I think in Web3 there's a lot of money that gets thrown around quite easily into projects because of the potential that project might have in the future. But definitely I would say don't just do your own research, ask other people, especially from the traditional gaming industry as well. What's your take on this? This is like a Web3 game, but does it stand out from the rest? Do you think it's got potential here? Who's behind it? Who's involved? So that's my 2 cents.
Absolutely. Knock, to your take on this.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Are
we
we
got
okay?
you out of the woods, baby.
All right. I'm fighting my absolute demons with Twitter Spaces right now. So if any of the previous speakers said anything that I said or I'm about to say, no, they didn't. I said it first. So what I wanted to say was gaming NFTs in particular fall into like my favorite category of assets, which is like the special group of it doesn't matter until it does, and then it matters a whole lot for the people that it matters to. And what I mean by that is gaming assets, especially game-specific assets, things that are designed to augment an experience in some way, shape, or form. It might be as basic as a skin on a weapon. It might be as complex as land and outputs and taking a share of economic activity within that land. But I think what's really interesting about making this decision is how ingrained within that ecosystem you are as a consumer. So what I was saying originally was, for me, I'm not super deep into many ecosystems anymore. So I take the token as a move, as an index on the broader ecosystem. Should the game do well, should asset prices within specific NFTs do well, then I feel like the token is a relatively safe index for growth within that eco. If you are involved deeply in a game ecosystem, there's almost always more upside for owning the right type of asset in the right, particular period of time for that game and for that experience. So to Wagner's point earlier, if you are somebody who's playing a game at a really deep level and you understand the types of assets that might be used and you've got some extra capital, it might make sense to buy more than the assets that you require for your own game experience and lend those out to create an additional income stream. For somebody who is really deeply ingrained within an ecosystem, it makes sense to over leverage on specific game assets because they have more highly specialized use cases and will oftentimes provide much greater return for people who need them within that ecosystem. If you're not that type of person and there's a token available, for me, the token is almost always the better move because it's a easier way to get exposure into the ecosystem without really having to do a deep dive and understand every nuance within how particular game assets will be used.
Fair points, and I appreciate the lean in at the end to leaning more into the token side, just because whether you're on the NFT side or the token side, a lot of times it's easy to get lost in the sort of what ifs and the higher level stuff. But at the end of the day, it is good to hear that people that have a knowledge on it are leaning more one way or the other for whatever reason. Also, a big thank you again to everyone that's retweeted the space. We have a ton of retweets on the space today, which is really great to see, especially on what's been a rough weekend. So let's go to Alex and then to Michael Wagner and then kick off the next one with Sam.
Yeah, I totally recognize before I say this that this is also maybe a bit of a hot take because I'm a hyper conservative investor when it comes to this kind of stuff. But I think I always just try to keep in mind like the natural life cycle of anything tokenized when the speculative market gets its hands on it, which is, step one, speculation. We're all kind of guessing and there's lots of conjecture. This was a lot, this is the nature of crypto, right? And then step two, if a token of any variety is lucky enough to make it there, are there any users demanding this thing? Will it continue? A good example is Solana, which had demand last time. it cratered with the whole market for the entire bear market, and then people demanded it, so it came back. Of course, it helped that they released some new updates and there was stuff to talk about, whatever, marketing on point. But then you compare that to something that was super hyped, I don't know, VXV, vector space, right? Like, oh, it was the sexiest AI token of all time, and this company was going to use it for all of these incredible things. And then, oh, side note, you could just use dollars. Token didn't need to exist. 0 people on Earth demanded it. It died of flaming death. And that I just always have such a hard time with tokens of any variety, even in the gaming space, just because it's hard for me to like visualize that like large scale user demand to the point where the founders can kind of stomach it. Because speaking from personal experience running a tokenized ecosystem and having holders, it really, really weighs on you, and it takes a ton of your energy away from the thing that you're supposed to be doing to give the token value, in order to just make sure that you're trying to keep holders happy, because tons of people are there with you exclusively for price action, not to use your thing for the thing that you want them to use it for. And that message falls on deaf ears a lot. I'm speaking from years of experience with that one. It's rough. Like, I know it kind of is a meme, like founder takes a mental health break, but I am telling you, it is it's so draining. And I just always keep that in the back of my head when I'm looking at evaluating any token to buy, whether it's an NFT. And I guess last little point, just please remember, if you're looking at NFTs, that some of them are great. I love them. I'm a pack rat. I love collecting. I have probably 150,000 Magic cards on the table behind me. Most of them are not very good, but I love the artwork. They're organized by all sorts of different things. I love collecting. That's why I like NFTs, because I just like a digital scrapbook of all my time in Web3. But please remember that liquidity on selling and buying NFTs is very different from buying and selling tokens. So just make sure it's like a token that you actually really like and something you want, unless you're just comfortable taking that straight up risk, because they're riskier than liquid tokens. But
let's go with the Magic the Gathering shout out. I still have the entire 3rd edition in a shoebox in my closet. Respect.
you got to look at that thing, man. You don't know what's in that box.
Yeah, I got some throwbacks. Me and Sam grew up on it. It's incredible. Michael Wagner, let's hit you, and then back to Sammy.
Yeah, Alex, as a 2-time founder in crypto and having built Star Atlas now over the last 4 years, I can definitely attest to the fact that it can be quite draining, particularly as you're going through some of the more difficult times. But we're still here, we're still strong, and we're super excited. I just wanted to take a quick moment to elaborate on 2 subjects that kind of came up from the other speakers, and that was the idea that you don't need tokens in games. First of all, the second one is that we shouldn't be spending $1,000 to access a game. Going back to whether or not you need a token in game, I would largely agree that not every single product suite requires a token. It really depends on the category of game that you're developing. Where I think it's most appropriate is, say, in our case, Star Atlas. We're building a massively multiplayer online game. And really, I think if you're looking at focusing on the concept of the metaverse in the future, where you will have at least the potential for interoperability between products and different versions of the game over time, I think having a functional currency in game denominated in a token actually makes a lot of sense. And I think an argument could be made, like, just use maybe USDC or some stable currency within the game. However, what that removes from the economy team of that studio is the ability to have flexibility in your monetary policy. So we actually, because of Atlas, we have all of these different levers that we can pull related to the emission structure of that and the incentivization structure behind all of it, and how players are essentially interacting with one another. It lets us essentially act like the Fed in the game, and eventually, through decentralization, that turns more over into the controls of, say, the DAO. But I would touch on one more specific point for Star Atlas, which is we have this DAO. We've established cash flow streams dedicated directly to the DAO through the collection of cash flows off of in-game taxation mechanisms. So if you're crafting an item and you pay Atlas, that Atlas goes direct to the DAO. It doesn't go to us as a studio. The key point is that the way we're trying to establish Star Atlas is give it the opportunity to be a perpetual product. Like after Automata, our studio is gone, the DAO has this means of collecting revenue on a monthly basis, and it can use that to continue to evolve the product with or without us there. So it's a pretty unique case. Tokens maybe not for every game, but I think for MMOs and Metaverse, absolutely. And then again, just on the price point that people pay to get into games, depending on what the additional value proposition is of that NFT. If you're just saying, hey, buy this NFT and get into pre-alpha, and ignoring the whole play for airdrop meta right now, we were kind of before all of that. But if it's just getting access to the game, I agree. Once again, in the case of Star Atlas, our economic reward structure maps to the value of the underlying NFTs. So people that are essentially willing to invest more capital into the game to play have better potential of earning revenue through time, subject to the complexity of the game and the strategy that they formulate throughout the game. So the other thing with strictly NFT style gaming products is that you do have to be concerned about the inflationary policy of those NFTs, which could very rapidly dilute the value of anything that you are collecting. This is my own fault. I've mentioned it in the past, but Zed Run, for a while there, I was playing Zed Run. I've gone back and looked at my horses now, and they're absolutely worthless because people were able to breed horses at a rate that I just wasn't keeping up with. So anyway, those types of things can impact you if you're an NFT holder as well. You still have to understand the inflationary policy of game emissions, whether it be in tokens or NFTs.
Rip Zed Run. I had some good horses too, my man. Let's send it to Andrew. Got the hand up.
Yeah, I think that was exceptionally well said about tokens as they relate to game economies and DAOs. I would agree that not literally every game needs a token, but I would implore people to try to think of tokens and player-owned game economies as a value capture mechanism that is more of benefit to the players and consumers, with an asterisk of if constructed correctly. Obviously, some of these tokens with a huge allocation to investors and founders and advisors that can dump and unlock, that's a different can of worms. But especially games that are doing like fair launch or tokens that are only emitted through like leaderboards or proof of play or various other mechanisms, I think it just opens up an economy where players have potential to realize a lot more of that value, and it helps shift a paradigm away from what we see in traditional gaming where developers and investors get to extract a lot from consumers. Obviously, the dark side is that the consumers have to bear some of the downside risk, and best of times we go up, worst of times we go down. So it turns your players into sort of co-investors a little bit, if you want to look at it that way. So certainly not all players are ready for that level of responsibility, but it's a really powerful mechanism. And at Crypto Unicorns, we've had a small but very intense player base, and I believe firmly that that's a big part of it, because those players feel like they genuinely own a piece of the ecosystem. And with our functioning DAO, we've had over 50 proposals. Like, they literally get to control, have an impact on the monetary policy. And to that point made earlier, if you're only doing USDC, there's not really a lot of creativity or gray area there. But if you have your own token and put it in the hands of a functioning DAO, players have like unprecedented levels of control over that gaming ecosystem compared to what we've seen over the last 20 years.
Man, a lot of great perspectives on this one. So many founders and just different projects on here. If you guys are in the audience, this is a real treat to have this panel today. Let's go to Dante to wrap it up, and then to Semi.
Dante from Scale, I know you've been having some difficulties. Looks like he disappeared again. I think Twitter has him down bad than even the rest of us on the panel here, which is unfortunate. I'm going to try to bring him up one more time real quick.
It's hard to believe someone could be down worse than me and Knock, but sorry, Dante.
Twitter is rugging me left and right. It seems to be a common thread throughout everyone in here. I've yet to be at a Twitter Spaces where everyone is pleased with Twitter or X or whatever. But I appreciate you being flexible here. I think that when we talk about tokens and NFTs, there's also sort of the idea of hoping for mass adoption when it comes to prices. Now, I don't want to speak on prices in any way, shape, and form, but I think it's also important to sort of balance how much you're using these NFTs and these tokens with the user experience, right? A lot of the times when we talk about Web3 games, in order to participate in the game, you might need a certain NFT, you might need to have a certain token, and that involves a wallet, and that involves, going out and buying crypto to buy these tokens or whatever it might be. And there's a lot of user barriers. I think that a lot of us fantasize, if I buy this asset, whether it be an NFT or a token, and suddenly 100,000 or a million other people, need this, then I'm going to become rich. And that's where a lot of the value, at least the optimism of that value, is coming from. But I also think that in order to get to that quote unquote mass adoption, you need to be able to balance that user experience with the super heavy, degen type of interactions, right? Because if you're relying on a million people to come who have, MetaMask and tokens and everything like that, that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. A lot of what we are doing at scale is helping people build out sort of invisible blockchain experiences that look and feel and interact like a Web2 game, but are still on chain. So you still get all the features and benefits. And those games, you might have a million people who come to play the games, but maybe only, 40% of those have an actual MetaMask, and the rest are playing the game because they're fun, and they might be trading the tokens within the game itself because, for all they know, it's V-Bucks, and once they learn about blockchain, they can come on and do all of that fun stuff. But regardless, it's very, very important for the games to balance what they want their ideal user experience to be with what they want sort of the economics of their game to be, because those two are a lot more interrelated than most people actually think, right? When we talk about this mass adoption, you need people to be able to mass adopt your game. And it's incredibly important to not be super reliant on the macro levels of, oh, how many people know what Bitcoin is, or how many people have a MetaMask, or how many people have a Binance account, or whatever it might be. And so, like I said, a lot of what I do on a daily basis and a lot of what Scale does is working with these founders to find that balance between, okay, how do I onboard my grandmother and my little cousins and my friends and family who don't know what blockchain is, with, okay, how do I deliver on-chain value not only to the game itself, but also to the holders of my assets?
Great stuff, Dante. What an amazing way to wrap up this show. I know we had a lot of topics that unfortunately we didn't get to this week, but it was a blessing in disguise because, man, having this panel of experts, I know Matt already said it, but just getting your perspective not only on the market, but how to approach assets in this time. Of course, nothing you heard today was financial advice, but it does give you such amazing perspective as somebody who maybe isn't working on a project, isn't founding a project, etc. So I really, really, really appreciate all of you for taking your extremely valuable time to be here with us today. As the final horn sounds on our fantastical festivities, don't forget to saddle up for the ongoing adventures in crypto unicorns. Dive into jousting tournaments and earn your share of CU coin while helping them burn through their tokens more than a dragon in a fireworks factory. With 16% of the circulating supply set to vanish into thin air this year, your contributions are legendary. And let's not forget the Play to Airdrop campaign charging through August, offering endless excitement and rewards. Stay magical, stay mythical, and keep those unicorns prancing. Thanks to Crypto Unicorns for being the official game of Simplified. And of course, YGG, that's Yield Guild Games Gap Season 6 has kicked off, offering treasure trove of opportunities to gamers to play and earn like never before. With more rewards, more games, and more chances to level up your life, YGG is the ultimate playground for the ambitious and the adventurous. And don't forget, YGG Play Summit is in Manila, spanning 5 days starting November 18th. So get ready to team up, level up, and rack up those rewards. Thank you to Yield Guild Games for being an official sponsor of Simplified. And ladies and gentlemen, before we sign off, let's shine a spotlight on the stellar sponsor sending shockwaves through the blockchain universe, none other than the titan of transactions. It's Scale, the official chain of Simplified. With $330 million worth of gas transactions saved in the last month compared to Ethereum L1, they're the gasless chain making mass onboarding possible compared to the rest. So if you're ready to break barriers and shatter records, hitch your wagon to the cosmic juggernaut that is our sponsor, Scale. Thank you again to this amazing panel. And Flansman.eth is going to be the person who wins that smoke.io guaranteed whitelist. So make sure you slide into my DM, send me your wallet address that you want to have signed onto that, and I'll make sure that that gets submitted. Again, it's on August 8th, so you don't have a whole lot of time. Please act accordingly. And again, big thank you to this amazing panel. We had Andrew from Crypto Unicorns, Johnny from Nexus Labs, Swagner, Mr. Michael Wagner himself from Star Atlas, Alex Popovich. Make sure you check out his content both on Twitter and on TikTok, always helping us simplify. Steven from Decimated, absolutely crushed it. Wyeth from Unioverse. We had Doofy from Dark Times and some others that had to drop off. But huge, huge, huge thank you to you guys. It was really an enlightening episode, especially again, given the market conditions. It's so easy to kind of get stuck in your own bubble and have the FUD take over, but you guys didn't let it today, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. Matt, any last words before we sign off today, brother?
Yeah, just echoing what Sam said. Appreciation for you guys being here, for the perspective. And hopefully the bottom is in not only on the market, but also on the performance of Twitter Spaces. And it's up only from here. Can't wait to hear Johnny next week. Really looking forward to that.
We all hope to hear Johnny next week. But in case you can't, don't worry. There's always the VODs both here on Twitter, and then also you can listen on Spotify to Simplified. We've been uploading those episodes to the Gamified account on Spotify just to make it a little bit simpler. So if you have a Spotify account, just type in Gamified, look for the big neon purple G, and you'll find both episodes of Gamified and Simplified available there just about 24 hours after we close up shop here after each episode. Thank you guys so much. It's been a great one. We'll see you back here, same time, same place, 4 p.m. Eastern, every single Monday. Can't wait.
I was just thinking, it's actually not a bad marketing strategy to just mute one of the best speakers on the panel so that everyone then has to also go listen to the upload. We could really be onto something, getting some double listens there. But thanks, guys, for joining in, and we'll see everybody back next Monday.
Wow, with creative marketing plans like that, you should launch an NFT project, bro. I think you've got the stuff. You've got what it takes.
Hopefully, you guys would choose it over my token, which if I launched would be at 0 right now. Till next week.
Bye, guys.